Giant Apache sisters saved by blonde cowboy. Next day, their father came with an impossible choice. Two towering sisters, cornered by drifters in the dust outside a saloon, when suddenly a lone blonde cowboy storms in, revolver drawn. In a single heartbeat, he saves them from ruin. The town gasps. A white man protecting Apache women? That alone would have set tongues wagging for years. But dawn brings something no one expected. Their father rides in an elder with fire in his eyes. He doesn't come to thank the cowboy, he comes with a demand. Either the sisters return to their starving tribe for the harsh winter or stay under the cowboy's roof, safe from settler hate, but cut off from their people forever. Now the frontier crackles with tension. The railroad is closing in. The townsfolk are whispering threats. And the sisters are caught between family, survival, and a man who risked everything for them. So what happens when love, loyalty, and the fate of two nations rest on a single choice? Comment below and tell me where in the world you're joining from. And if this story made you pause for a moment, hit that subscribe button for more. The setting sun painted long shadows across the dusty main street of Miller's Crossing. The day's heat still lingered in the wooden boardwalks as raucous laughter spilled from the Golden Spur Saloon. Outside its swinging doors, two Apache sisters found themselves surrounded by a group of drunken drifters, their hostile intent clear in their stumbling steps and cruel grins. Talia and Aruna stood back to back, their impressive height making them stand out even more among the gathering crowd. Talia's heart pounded, but she kept her face calm, one hand gripping her sister's arm in silent support. Aruna's fingers curled into fists, her dark eyes flashing with defiance. "Looks like we got ourselves some entertainment, boys." One of the drifters slurred, taking another swig from his bottle. The sharp smell of cheap whiskey carried on the evening breeze. "We want no trouble," Talia said firmly, though her voice wavered slightly. "We are only passing through." "Ain't natural for women to be that tall," another man sneered, reaching out to grab Aruna's sleeve. She jerked away, nearly stumbling into her sister. The crowd grew, townsfolk gathering to watch. Some turned away, shamefaced, while others jeered. Not one stepped forward to help. The sisters' height, usually their protection, now made them a spectacle. Leave them be. A strong voice cut through the growing noise. The crowd parted as Liam McGraw strode forward, his blond hair catching the last rays of sunlight. His hand rested steady on his holstered revolver, and his blue eyes were hard as steel. "This ain't your business, McGraw," the first drifter growled, but there was uncertainty in his stance now. "I'm making it my business." Liam's voice was quiet but carried clearly in the tense air. "Step away from the ladies." A sneer crossed the drifter's face. "Ladies? They're just—" The crack of Liam's revolver split the evening. Dust kicked up from where the bullet struck the ground near the drifter's feet. The man jumped back, suddenly stone sober. "Next one won't be aimed at the dirt," Liam said evenly. "Clear out, all of you." The crowd scattered like startled chickens, the drifters stumbling away into the gathering darkness. Only Liam and the sisters remained in the street, the echo of his warning shot still hanging in the air. "You're not safe here," Liam said, holstering his weapon. "There's shelter in the mission barn. If you'll allow me, I'll escort you there." Talia and Aruna exchanged a quick glance. They had little choice, and this man had just saved them from worse harm. Aruna gave a short nod. Though her posture remained tense, they walked in silence through the quieting streets, Liam keeping a respectful distance but staying alert for any further trouble. The mission barn stood at the edge of town, its weathered boards glowing softly in the last light of day. Inside, the barn was clean and warm, filled with the peaceful sounds of settling horses and the sweet smell of fresh hay. Liam lit a lantern, hanging it from a beam. Its gentle light revealed the sister's condition. Aruna had a scratch on her cheek, and Talia's shawl was torn. "Wait here," Liam said, disappearing into a small tack room. He returned with a tin of salve and a canteen of water. "It's not much, but it might help with those scrapes." Aruna watched him suspiciously as he set the items on a wooden crate between them. "Why did you help us?" "Because it was right," Liam answered simply. "I won't stand by while women are mistreated, Apache or not. My mama raised me better than that." Something in his straightforward manner seemed to ease some of the tension from Aruna's shoulders. She reached for the salve, dabbing it gently on. Her sister's forearm where rough hands had left marks. Talia accepted the canteen when Liam offered it, taking a careful sip before passing it to her sister. "Thank you," she said softly. "Few would have acted as you did." "Few ain't the same as none," Liam replied, settling onto a bale of hay. "You're welcome to rest here tonight. The mission's empty. Father Thomas is away visiting the reservation, but the barn's secure. I'll keep watch outside until morning." Aruna finished tending to her sister's wounds and turned to Talia, speaking low in Apache. "Sister, perhaps we were wrong to think all white men the same. This one," she glanced at Liam, who was purposely busying himself with checking the lantern, giving them privacy. "This one has honor." Outside, the night settled over the town like a heavy blanket, but whispers were already spreading from house to house, door to door. Scandal traveled fast in small towns, a rancher defending Apache women, housing them in the mission barn. Some whispered approval, admiring Liam McGraw's courage. Others muttered darker things about a man who'd sided with Indians against his own kind. In the barn, Liam spread clean blankets over soft hay, creating comfortable pallets for the sisters. "I'll be right outside if you need anything," he said, heading for the door. "You're safe here." Talia watched him go, noting the quiet strength in his movements, the respect in his manner. Her sister was right. This man was different. In the soft lantern light, she allowed herself to feel the first stirrings of hope. Perhaps there was still goodness to be found in this harsh land, even in the hearts of those they had learned to fear. The lantern flickered, casting dancing shadows on the barn walls. The sisters settled onto their makeshift beds, their breathing slowly steadying in the peaceful quiet. Outside, Liam McGraw took up his vigil, his revolver ready, his eyes scanning the darkness for any sign of trouble. The night stretched ahead, long and uncertain, but for now, at least, they had found a moment of safety in the kindness of a stranger. Morning light streamed through the windows of Miller's Crossing Mercantile, where the aroma of fresh coffee mingled with the scent of leather and tobacco. The usual morning crowd had gathered around the pot-bellied stove, their conversations more animated than usual. "Heard McGraw took in 2 Apache women last night," Sarah Jenkins said, adjusting her bonnet. "Right in the mission barn, if you can." "Believe it." Tom Wilson, the blacksmith, spat into a brass spittoon. "Fool's gonna get himself killed, mixing with Indians like that. Ain't natural." "Natural or not, those girls were in trouble," old Mrs. Peterson countered, her wrinkled hands wrapped around a steaming cup. "Them drifters were looking for mischief." "Still," muttered Wilson, "man ought to know better. Whole town's talking." Indeed, whispers followed Liam McGraw as he crossed the street toward the general store. His boots kicked up small clouds of dust with each step, and he paid no mind to the sideways glances thrown his way. Inside, he gathered fresh bread, eggs, and a small sack of coffee. "Feeding strays now, McGraw?" the shopkeeper asked, his tone sharp. Liam counted out coins onto the counter. "Reckon what I do with my money ain't your concern, Mr. Hayes." Back at his small cabin near the mission, Liam worked over his cast-iron stove. The eggs sizzled in the pan while thick slices of bread toasted on the stovetop. He carried the simple meal to the barn, where Talia and Aruna had spent the night. The sisters sat on hay bales, their long legs folded beneath them. They'd already tidied their sleeping area, folding the blankets with careful precision. Morning light filtered through gaps in the wooden walls, creating strips of gold across the dirt floor. "Thought you might be hungry," Liam said, setting down the plate of food. "It ain't fancy, but it's hot." Aruna eyed the food warily, but Talia offered a small smile. "You are kind, Mr. McGraw." "Just Liam," he corrected gently, settling onto a nearby crate. He waited until they had each taken some food before speaking again. "If you don't mind my asking, where's your family?" Aruna's spine stiffened, but Talia placed a calming hand on her sister's arm. "Our people are far from here," Talia said quietly. "The winter was hard. Game is scarce and the government rations." She trailed off, pain flickering across her face. "We left to find food," Aruna added abruptly. "To bring back supplies for the children. The little ones are hungry." Hungry. Liam nodded slowly, understanding the weight of what wasn't being said. "There's honest work to be had around here, if you're interested. Mrs. Peterson needs help with mending. Her eyes ain't what they used to be." And the Watson Ranch always needs strong backs for hauling wood and such. The sisters exchanged a surprised look. Talia's eyes widened slightly, while Aruna's narrowed with suspicion. You would help us find work? Talia asked carefully. Even though we are Apache? Work's work, Liam said simply. Don't matter who does it, long as it's done right. Later that morning, Liam walked with the sisters through town. The streets were busy with morning traffic. Wagons rattling past, women heading to market, children scurrying to school. Nearly every head turned to watch their passage. Some faces showed open contempt. Mrs. Jenkins pulled her young son closer as they passed. Tom Wilson stood in his smithy doorway, hammer gripped tight, watching with hard eyes. But others, like old Mrs. Peterson, offered small nods of greeting. Outside the church, Reverend Clark stood sweeping the steps. The elderly preacher paused, his work as they approached, leaning on his broom handle. Morning, Liam, he called out, his voice warm. I heard about what you did last night. Liam touched the brim of his hat respectfully. Just did what needed doing, Reverend. The old man's eyes crinkled at the corners. Compassion takes more strength than anger, son. Don't let anyone tell you different. His kind gaze included the sisters in his smile. The Lord sees all his children with the same eyes. They had just reached the edge of town when the sound of approaching horses drew their attention. Hoofbeats thundered on the packed earth, growing louder. 3 riders appeared around the bend, 2 young braves flanking a tall, distinguished elder on a paint horse. Talia and Aruna went very still. Father, Talia whispered. Chief Nahwal sat straight and proud on his horse, his face lined with years of leadership and worry. His dark eyes fixed on Liam with the intensity of a hawk studying its prey. The 2 braves' hands rested near their weapons. Their expressions guarded. Liam stood his ground, though his heart hammered in his chest. He kept his hands visible at his sides, away from his holstered revolver. The entire street had gone quiet, townsfolk freezing in place to watch the scene unfold. Chief Nahwal dismounted with fluid grace despite his years. He approached slowly, his bearing regal despite trail-worn clothes. His gaze never left Liam as he stopped a few paces away. You have my daughters, he said, his voice deep and measured. The words weren't quite a question, nor quite an accusation. They needed help, sir, Liam replied steadily. I offered what I could. The chief's eyes narrowed slightly, studying Liam's face as if searching for something hidden there. The tension in the air grew thick enough to cut with a knife. Around them, the town held its breath, waiting to see what would happen next. Liam stood at the crossroads of a choice that would change everything, but he didn't know it yet. All he knew was that a father had come for his daughters, and how he handled the next few moments could mean the difference between peace and violence, trust and fear, hope and despair. The sun climbed higher in the morning sky, casting sharp shadows across the dusty street where 2 worlds had suddenly collided. Chief Nawal's stern gaze never wavered as he waited for Liam's next move, while behind them, the whispers of Miller's Crossing grew silent in anticipation. Chief Nahwal stood, like a weathered oak in the morning light, his presence commanding the dusty street. The townsfolk who had gathered kept their distance, watching the confrontation unfold with wary eyes. Why do my daughters shelter under a white man's protection? Nawal's voice carried the weight of generations, each word measured and deliberate. His dark eyes studied Liam with the intensity of a man who had seen too many broken promises. Liam kept his stance open, non-threatening, though his spine remained straight. Sir, there were drifters in town last night. Bad men who meant your daughter's harm. He gestured toward the saloon. I couldn't stand by and watch. The chief's weathered face remained impassive, but his eyes flickered briefly to his daughters. Is this true? Talia stepped forward, her head held high despite the tension. Yes, father. The white man, Liam, he drove them away, gave us shelter when others turned their backs. Her voice softened. He has been kind. Aruna nodded in agreement, though she remained half a step behind her sister, her fingers worrying the hem of her dress. Nawal was silent for a long moment, the only sound the distant cry of a hawk wheeling overhead. When he spoke again, his voice carried a deep sadness. My daughters, our people face a harsh truth. He turned to face them fully. The winter comes early this year. Game grows scarce. The government's promises of food lie empty, like wind through dead grass. Liam watched as both sisters' shoulders tensed, understanding flooding their faces. The children grow thin, Nahwal continued. The old ones weaken. Every strong back, every pair of hands that can work, we need them all to survive. He straightened, his face grave. But know this, to remain here, under a settler's protection, is to cut yourself from the tribe. Our ways cannot bend so far without breaking. The weight of his words settled over them like a heavy blanket. Talia and Aruna stood frozen, the impossible choice written clearly on their faces: return to face hunger and perhaps death with their people, or remain behind in relative safety but severed from all they had ever known. The sisters remained silent, the burden of decision stealing their voices. Nahwal nodded slowly, understanding their struggle. I will return when the sun touches the western hills tomorrow, he said. Your choice must be made by then. He turned to Liam, his expression stern but not unkind. You acted with honor to protect my daughters, but sometimes protection brings its own kind of harm. With those words hanging in the air, Nahwal mounted his horse with fluid grace. The two braves who had accompanied him followed suit, and the small group rode away, hoofbeats fading into the morning stillness. The sisters retreated to the barn. Without a word, the wooden door closing behind them with a soft thud. Liam remained outside, his heart heavy with the weight of what had just transpired. The morning sun climbed higher, burning away the last traces of dawn's coolness, but he barely noticed the growing heat. Hours passed like molasses. Liam kept his distance, respecting the sisters' need for privacy as they wrestled with their choice. He busied himself with tasks around town, mending a broken wagon wheel, helping old Mrs. Peterson carry supplies from the mercantile, anything to keep his hands busy while his mind churned. As afternoon began its slow slide toward evening, Liam made a decision. He walked to the barn and knocked softly on the wooden door. Talia? Aruna, he called out. I know you've got a lot to think on, but I've got a small ranch just outside town. Would you join me for supper? There was a long pause before Talia's voice answered. Why? Because decisions this big shouldn't be made on an empty stomach, Liam replied. And because you deserve at least one peaceful meal before tomorrow comes. Another pause, then the sound of movement inside. The door opened, revealing both sisters. Their eyes were red-rimmed but dry, their faces composed. We would be honored, Talia said softly. Liam saddled his horse and borrowed 2 gentle mares from the livery stable. The sisters, he noticed, handled their mounts with easy confidence, sitting straight and proud in their saddles. They rode in silence through the golden evening light, dust rising in soft clouds beneath their horses' hooves. His ranch was modest, a small cabin with a vegetable patch, a barn that needed fresh paint, and a few head of cattle grazing in the distance. But the setting sun painted everything in warm colors, and the scent of sage carried on the evening breeze gave the place a peaceful feeling. Inside the cabin, Liam stirred up the banked fire and set about preparing a simple meal. He had fresh bread from town, beans he'd soaked that morning before everything happened, and some salted beef he could fry up. It wasn't fancy, but it would fill empty bellies. The sisters sat at his rough-hewn table, the firelight softening their features and casting dancing shadows on the walls. They helped without being asked, Aruna slicing the bread while Talia fetched water from the pump outside. As they worked together in the small space, some of the day's tension began to ease. The familiar rituals of preparing a meal seemed to ground them all, giving their hands purpose while their minds worked through heavier things. The meal itself was simple but filling. They ate mostly in silence, broken occasionally by quiet requests to pass the bread or the beans. The fire crackled softly in the hearth, and through the window, they could see the first stars beginning to appear in the darkening sky. Liam didn't press them to talk about their decision. He understood that some choices needed space to breathe, needed time to settle in the heart before they could be spoken aloud. But he could see the weight of it in their eyes, in the way their gazes sometimes drifted to the window, perhaps seeing beyond the glass to the distant hills where their people waited. The uncertainty of tomorrow hung in the air like smoke, visible in the sisters' occasional shared glances, in the way their hands sometimes trembled slightly as they reached for their cups. Yet for this moment, at least, they had warm food in their bellies and a safe place to rest. As the last of the light faded from the sky, The fire's glow became their only illumination, casting long shadows across the cabin's plank floor. Tomorrow would bring its own trials, but for now, they sat in a pocket of warmth and relative peace. 3 people from different worlds sharing bread and silence under the vast western sky. The first rays of dawn painted the sky in soft pinks and golds as Liam led the sisters out of his cabin. Morning dew sparkled on the grass, and a cool breeze carried the sweet scent of sage across the ranch. He'd risen early to prepare a simple breakfast of coffee and leftover cornbread, which they'd shared in comfortable silence. Thought I might show you around the spread, Liam said, gesturing to the expanse before them. It ain't much, but it's home. Talia and Aruna followed him, their steps careful but curious. The ranch was modest compared to others in the territory. A small barn that needed fresh paint, a chicken coop, and a corral where a handful of horses dozed in the early morning light. Beyond stretched grazing land were his small herd of cattle, moved like dark shapes against the golden grass. First thing's always the morning chores, Liam explained, heading toward a pile of split logs. Wood needs hauling to the kitchen stack. Without hesitation, both sisters stepped forward. Aruna grabbed 2 logs in her strong arms while Talia gathered an armful. Liam watched impressed as they matched his pace load for load. Their movements were efficient, their strength evident in the ease with which they handled the heavy wood. You're both stronger than you look, he commented, stacking the last logs. Aruna straightened, brushing dust from her skirt. Our people do not raise weak daughters, she said simply. A hint of pride in her voice. Next, Liam led them to the barn where several pieces of harness leather needed mending. He pulled out his repair kit, needles, wax thread, and leather patches, expecting to demonstrate the task. But Aruna's eyes lit up with interest as she examined a torn saddle strap. I can fix this, she said, reaching for a needle. Her fingers moved with surprising dexterity, the stitches small and even. In our camp, I often mended moccasins and hunting bags. Liam nodded appreciatively. That's mighty fine work, he said, watching her skilled hands work the leather, while Aruna focused on repairs. Talia helped Liam with the morning feeding. They carried water buckets to the cattle, her strong arms making light work of the task. As they walked, she began to hum softly, a melody that seemed to float on the morning air, making even the routine chore feel somehow lighter. That's a pretty tune, Liam said as they filled the troughs. Talia's humming faded to a shy smile. A song of my people, she explained, about morning dew on grass and how each day brings new life. The morning passed quickly as they worked together. Liam found himself impressed by their willingness to tackle any task, their quiet competence, and their ability to find joy in simple work. They moved with the natural grace of people used to living close to the land, their presence somehow making his small ranch feel more alive. Around midday, the sound of wagon wheels caught their attention. A well-maintained buggy approached, driven by Mrs. Keating, a widow who owned one of the larger spreads in the area. She pulled up near the cabin, her face pinched with what looked like concern. Liam McGraw, she called out, climbing down from the wagon seat. She carried a basket covered with a checkered cloth. Thought you might appreciate some fresh eggs. Heaven knows a bachelor's table can use some proper food. Much obliged, Mrs. Keating, Liam said, accepting the basket. He could feel the sisters watching from near the barn, where they'd instinctively withdrawn at the sound of approaching wheels. Mrs. Keating's eyes darted to the sisters, her expression hardening. She lowered her voice, though not enough. Liam, word spreading about your guests, she pursed her lips. It ain't right, harboring savages. You're asking for trouble. Mark my words. Liam's jaw tightened, but he kept his voice level. There. 2 women who needed help, Mrs. Keating. Nothing more, nothing less. It ain't natural, she insisted. What will folks think? Your reputation. My reputation will have to weather it, Liam cut in firmly. Thank you for the eggs, ma'am, but I reckon I know my own mind on this. Mrs. Keating drew herself up, clearly offended. Without another word, she climbed back into her wagon and snapped the reins, sending dust flying as she drove away. Liam found the sisters by the barn, their faces carefully blank but their eyes holding hurt they tried to hide. Pay her no mind, he said gently. You're safe here, long as you choose to stay. Aruna's hands clenched at her sides. Safe until the next person decides we don't belong? Safe, Liam repeated firmly, though inside he felt the weight of growing pressure from the community. He knew Mrs. Keating's visit was just the beginning. They worked through the afternoon, the sisters throwing themselves into tasks as if trying to prove their worth. As evening approached, Liam prepared a simple supper of beans and fresh cornbread, using Mrs. Keating's eggs despite the bitter taste of her words. They ate by lamplight, the flame casting warm shadows on the cabin walls. The day's work had created a comfortable familiarity between them, and as they finished their meal, Talia spoke softly. "I have a dream," she said, her fingers tracing patterns on the wooden table. "Sometimes I imagine teaching children, not just our people's children, but settler children too." She looked up, meeting Liam's eyes. "The missionary woman who taught me to read, she showed me that knowledge can build bridges." Liam nodded encouragingly, and Aruna spoke next, her usual boldness tempered by the intimate moment. "I wish to heal," she said. "Our people know many remedies, herbs, poultices, ways to ease pain. But I would learn settler medicine too. Both kinds of wisdom together could help many." Liam sat back, deeply moved by their revelations. These weren't just survivors seeking shelter. They were women with visions of a better future, dreams that could help heal the divisions between their peoples. He saw in their faces the cost of such dreams, the courage it took to voice them, the fear they might never come true. The lamplight flickered, casting long shadows as they sat in companionable silence, each lost in thought. Outside, a coyote called lonely in the distance, and somewhere an owl answered. Inside the cabin, three people from different worlds shared a moment of understanding, their hearts heavy with the weight of tomorrow's choice, yet lifted by the simple act of sharing dreams in the gathering dark. Dawn broke crisp and clear over Liam's ranch. The morning chores went quickly with three sets of hands working together. As the sun climbed higher, Liam saddled his bay gelding while readying 2 spare mounts for the sisters. "Reckon we ought to head into town for supplies," he said, adjusting a stirrup, running low on flour and such. Talia and Aruna exchanged glances. They hadn't returned to town since that first night, and wariness showed in their faces. But needs were needs, so they mounted up, their seats sure and natural in the saddle. The ride into town was quiet, dust rising from the horses' hooves as they followed the rutted wagon track. As they approached the outskirts, Liam noticed how both sisters sat straighter, their shoulders tense. He guided them down the main street, where morning activity was already in full swing. The boardwalk creaked under their boots as they tied their horses. Townsfolk stopped to stare, women paused. In doorways, men halted mid-conversation. Whispers followed them like shadows. "Ain't right," someone muttered. "Mick Raw's lost his mind," came another voice. A group of boys lounged against a hitching post, snickering as the sisters passed. One made a whooping sound, cruel mockery in the gesture. "Thomas Jenkins!" The sharp voice cut through the morning air like a knife. Reverend Alcott stood in the doorway of his church, his normally gentle face stern. "You and your friends ought to be ashamed." "Is this how Christian boys behave?" The boys scattered, red-faced. The Reverend approached, nodding respectfully to Liam and the sisters. "Good morning to you all. Don't let those young scalawags trouble you. They need teaching in manners yet." "Much obliged, Reverend," Liam said quietly. Inside the general store, the bell above the door announced their entrance. Mrs. Potter, the storekeeper's wife, watched from behind the counter with curious eyes as Liam gathered supplies, a sack of flour, salt for preserving, and a tin of kerosene for the lamps. When it came time to settle up, Talia stepped forward. She studied the column of figures Mrs. Potter had written, her finger moving down the paper. $23.45, she said softly. Before Mrs. Potter could announce the total, Mrs. Potter blinked in surprise. "Why, that's exactly right. Where did you learn your figures?" "A missionary woman taught me," Talia explained. "Numbers are the same in any language." Mrs. Potter's face softened slightly. "Well, I never." "That's right, clever. Clever." As they loaded their supplies, a harsh coughing drew their attention. Near the livery stable, a small boy doubled over, his mother patting his back helplessly. The cough was deep and wet, rattling in his chest. Aruna's head snapped up at the sound. Without hesitation, she moved toward the pair, reaching into the pouch she always carried at her waist. The mother drew back slightly, pulling her son closer. "Please," Aruna said softly, her voice gentle as she would use with a frightened animal. "I can help." She pulled out a handful of dried leaves, dark green and aromatic, medicine from the earth. "It will ease his breathing." The mother hesitated, looking from the herbs to her son's pale face. Another coughing fit doubled him over, and she made her decision. What do we do with them?" "Crush them fine," Aruna demonstrated with practiced movements. "Mix with a little warm water. Let him breathe the steam." She prepared the remedy with quick, sure hands. The boy inhaled the steam rising from the cup, and gradually his coughing eased. Color returned to his cheeks as his breathing settled into a normal rhythm. "Thank you," his mother whispered, wonder and gratitude replacing fear in her eyes. "I'm Sarah Miller. This is my Tommy." "I am Aruna," came the simple reply. "The earth provides healing if we know where to look." The tension of the morning had cracked, just a little. Several onlookers had witnessed the exchange, and Liam noticed, their expressions shifting from suspicion to something closer to curiosity. They returned to the ranch as afternoon shadows lengthened. Liam had just finished showing the sisters how to work his cast-iron stove when hoofbeats approached. Reverend Alcott appeared in the doorway, hat in hand. "Hope I'm not intruding," he said. "Thought I might join you for supper, if there's room." At the table, Liam welcomed him in while Talia added another plate to the table. The meal was simple, beans with salt pork and fresh cornbread, but the conversation flowed easier with the preacher's gentle presence. As they finished eating, Reverend Alcott pulled a worn Bible from his coat. "Been thinking on something," he said, thumbing through the pages. "Here it is, Galatians chapter 3. His voice took on the familiar cadence of Scripture. "There is neither Jew nor Greek. There is neither bond nor free. There is neither male nor female, for they are all one in Christ Jesus." He closed the book softly. "The Lord doesn't see the divisions we make between peoples. In His eyes, we're all His children." He looked at each person around the table in turn. "Maybe it's time we started seeing each other the same way." Liam felt something stir in his chest, hope, fragile as a morning glory blossom. He looked at the sisters, Aruna, who had shown such compassion to a stranger's child, Talia, who bridged worlds with her knowledge of numbers and letters. Perhaps they were meant to be here, helping to heal the rifts between their peoples one small act at a time. The sisters sat straighter, something in their faces softening at the preacher's words. For the first time since they'd arrived, they looked truly at peace, as if they'd found a glimpse of belonging. Outside, the sunset painted the sky in shades of purple and gold. Inside Liam's cabin, lamplight gleamed on the faces around the table, a cowboy, a preacher, and two Apache sisters. For this one evening, the distances between their worlds seemed to shrink, replaced by the simple warmth of shared food and understanding. Morning dawned cold and gray over Liam's ranch. Delicate snow flurries drifted like cotton wisps across the high country, dusting the fence posts and scrub brush with white. Liam stood on his cabin porch, studying the heavy clouds that promised more snow to come. "Looks like winter's fixing to settle in early this year," he called to Talia and Aruna as they emerged from the barn. "Best get more wood chopped while we can," the sisters nodded, following him to the woodpile. Their breath formed small clouds in the crisp air. Liam demonstrated the proper technique, showing them how to position the logs and swing the axe safely. "Like this?" Aruna asked, hefting the tool. Her strike split the wood cleanly. "Natural talent," Liam grinned. His own shoulder twinged as he worked, a reminder of an old injury that bothered him in cold weather. They fell into a steady rhythm, Liam splitting the larger logs, Talia stacking the pieces, and Aruna alternating between helping with both tasks. The physical labor warmed them despite the bitter wind that swept down from the mountains. By midday, they had built up an impressive woodpile. Inside the cabin, Liam stoked up the stove while Talia settled at the rough-hewn table with his old Bible. The leather cover was worn smooth from years of handling, its pages dog-eared and marked. "This one," she said, pointing to a familiar hymn. "Amazing Grace. Will you help me with the words?" Liam pulled up a chair beside her, noting how carefully she traced each line with her finger. "Amazing Grace, how sweet the sound," he began softly. "That saved a wretch like me," Talia joined in, her accent lending a unique beauty to the familiar verses. Aruna moved about the cabin as they practiced, gathering dried herbs from her medicine pouch. She crushed the leaves between her fingers, releasing their sharp, clean scent into the warm air. "For your shoulder," she explained, steeping the herbs in hot water. "I see how you favor it in the cold." Liam accepted the steaming cup gratefully. The tea was bitter but warming, and he could feel the ache in his shoulder beginning to ease. "Much obliged," he said. "You've got healing hands, Aruna." As afternoon faded toward evening, they prepared for the church gathering. Liam had mentioned Reverend Alcott's invitation at breakfast, and though the sisters seemed nervous, they agreed to attend. The little church glowed with lamplight as they approached. Settlers were already filing in, stamping snow from their boots on the wooden steps. Conversations died away as Liam entered with Talia and Aruna. The silence felt heavy with unspoken judgment. Mrs. Potter from the store clutched her shawl tighter. The Jenkins boys whispered and pointed until their father cuffed them quiet. But Reverend Alcott stood at the front, welcoming them with a warm smile. Come in, he called. "There's room in the front pews." They settled into the hard wooden bench as the congregation rustled behind them. Liam could feel the sisters' tension in their rigid postures. But when the first hymn began, Talia's voice rose clear and sweet, joining the familiar melody she had practiced earlier. Reverend Alcott took his place behind the simple pulpit, opening his Bible. "Tonight," he began, "I want to speak about love casting out fear." His gentle voice filled the small space as he preached about Christ's command to love one's neighbors, about seeing past differences to the heart within. "Perfect love," he said, "drives away fear like sunlight drives away shadows. We cannot truly love while clinging to our fears." The words seemed to settle over the congregation like a blanket. Even the most disapproving faces softened somewhat. Liam noticed Talia's eyes growing bright with unshed tears. "Perhaps here we belong," she whispered, so quietly he almost missed it. After the final hymn, several townspeople approached them. Old Mr. Wilson shook Liam's hand firmly. "Good to see you, McGraw," he said, nodding politely to the sisters. Mrs. Miller brought Tommy forward to thank Aruna again for helping with his cough. Others filed past stiffly, avoiding eye contact. The Jenkins family and several others hurried out without speaking. But overall, Liam felt encouraged by the evening. The ride home was peaceful under a bright moon. Fresh snow crunched under the horses' hooves, and the sisters' spirits seemed lighter. Aruna even hummed one of the hymns they had sung, but the peace shattered when they reached the cabin. In the silver moonlight, Liam spotted something attached to his door. His heart sank as he dismounted and moved closer. A crude note had been nailed to the wood. The rough letters spelled out a clear threat. "Send them back or else." Liam ripped the paper down, his jaw clenched tight. Behind him, he heard Talia's sharp intake of breath. Aruna muttered something in Apache, her voice trembling. The warmth of the evening had vanished, replaced by a cold that had nothing to do with the winter air. Liam crumpled the note in his fist, scanning the darkness beyond the cabin. Nothing moved except the drifting snow. "Come inside," he said quietly, ushering the sisters through the door. "Don't worry, you're safe here." But as he stoked up the fire and helped them settle in for the night, he couldn't shake the chill of knowing that someone had visited his property while they were gone. Someone who meant harm. The sisters huddled close to the stove, their earlier joy replaced by familiar fear. The note lay crumpled in Liam's pocket, a paperweight that seemed to grow heavier with each passing moment. Outside, the snow continued to fall, covering their tracks and any sign of the mysterious visitor. But the threat remained, hanging in the air like frost. The morning sun cast long shadows across the frost-covered ground as Liam led Talia and Aruna behind his cabin. 3 tin cans perched on a weathered fence post about 30 paces away. In his hands, he held his spare Winchester rifle, well-worn but meticulously maintained. "First rule," he said firmly, "is you never point this at anything you don't aim to shoot. Second rule is you only use it to defend yourselves." He demonstrated proper handling, showing them how to check if it was loaded, how to aim along the barrel. "Like this?" Talia asked, accepting the rifle carefully. Her hands found the proper positions naturally, surprising Liam. "That's right. Now, squeeze the trigger gentle-like. Don't pull hard." The rifle cracked. One of the tin cans jumped off the fence post. Talia's eyes widened at her own accuracy. Well done, Liam nodded approvingly. Aruna, you want to try? Aruna took her turn, her shot going wide but still respectable for a first attempt. They practiced through the morning, Liam patient in his instruction, until both sisters could handle the weapon competently. Remember, he emphasized as they finished, this is for protection only. I pray you'll never need it. The afternoon found them spread along his north pasture, mending broken fence posts. The sisters worked steadily, Aruna's strong hands making quick work of the heavy posts while Talia helped string new wire. The rhythm of their labor was broken by approaching hoofbeats. Jake Turner, a hand from the Collins spread to the east, rode up on his bay mare. His expression was troubled as he dismounted. McGraw, he called out, thought you ought to know. Railroad men been riding your section line. Liam straightened, wiping sweat from his brow. That so? Saw them myself yesterday. Had survey equipment, maps and such. Word is they're planning to run the line straight through these parts. Jake glanced at the sisters, then back to Liam. Right through your best grazing land from what I heard. Appreciate the warning, Jake, Liam said evenly, though his jaw tightened. But this is my father's land. Got the papers to prove it. Jake shook his head. Papers don't mean much to railroad men, Liam. You know that. He mounted up, touching his hat brim. Just thought you should know. They watched him ride away, dust kicking up behind his horse. Talia touched Liam's arm gently. You are troubled. It's nothing, he said, but his movements were sharp with tension as they finished the fence work. That evening, snow began falling in earnest. Inside the warm cabin, Aruna stirred a pot of venison stew while Talia set out tin plates and cups. The familiar scent of cooking meat and herbs filled the small space. Liam sat at the table, more quiet than usual. The sisters exchanged glances, sensing his preoccupation. Finally, as they ate, he spoke. My father built this place, he said softly, looking around the cabin. Came out here with nothing but his wagon and his dreams. Said a man could make something of himself on his own land if he worked hard enough. The sisters listened intently. As he continued, Railroad tried to force him out back in '68. Said they needed the water rights. Pa wouldn't budge. His spoon pushed the stew around his plate. One morning, found him shot dead by the creek. Never did catch who did it. This land holds your father's spirit, Talia said quietly. Like our sacred places hold our ancestors. Liam nodded, touched by her understanding. Been protecting it ever since. Not just the land itself, but what it stands for. A man's right to make his own way. The snow fell harder outside, wind whistling through the cabin's chinks. Aruna rose to add wood to the stove while Talia cleared the dishes. The domestic sound seemed to ease some of Liam's tension. As the evening deepened, Talia settled on a low stool near the fire. Aruna knelt behind her, gentle fingers working through her sister's long dark hair. She began weaving it into intricate braids, a familiar ritual that spoke of comfort and connection. Talia's voice rose soft and clear in the hymn she had been practicing. Amazing grace. How sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me, Liam. Watched them from his chair, struck by how natural their presence felt in his home. The firelight played across their faces, highlighting the peace in their expressions. These weren't strangers anymore, or even guests. They had become something more, family. Perhaps. Aruna's fingers moved deftly through her sister's hair, weaving patterns learned from their mother. Talia's song drifted through the cabin like a blessing. Outside, the snow continued to fall, blanketing the world in white silence. The peaceful moment stood in sharp contrast to the threats gathering around them. Somewhere out there, railroad men plotted their surveys. Hostile townsfolk watched and waited. The weight of it all pressed against the cabin walls like the deepening snow. But here, in this moment, there was only warmth and connection. Liam saw it in the way Aruna smoothed her sister's finished braids, in Talia's gentle smile as she helped bank the fire for the night. They moved through his space with the ease of belonging, and he realized his home felt fuller, richer for their presence. Evening drew to a close with quiet preparations for sleep. As Liam checked the door latch one final time, he caught sight of the sisters spreading their blankets near the stove. Talia hummed another hymn under her breath while Aruna added one last log to the fire. Tomorrow would bring its own challenges. The railroad men might come, or worse. But tonight, In this snow-wrapped cabin, they had found a moment of peace. Liam settled into his own bed, listening to the soft breathing of his unexpected family, and felt somehow more complete than he had in years. The blizzard struck without warning. One moment, the morning sky held only light flurries. The next, fierce winds drove sheets of white sideways across the land. Liam hurried to secure the livestock in the barn, while Talia and Aruna helped gather extra firewood into the cabin. By nightfall, snow had piled halfway up the cabin door. Wind howled through every crack and crevice, making the lantern flames dance. Liam stoked the potbelly stove until it glowed cherry red, while Aruna wrapped blankets around her sister's shoulders. "Never seen a storm quite like this," Liam said, settling into his chair. "Reckon we'll be stuck here a spell." "Our people tell stories during such times," Talia replied softly, "to pass the hours and keep spirits warm." The first day of their confinement passed slowly. They shared coffee and cornbread, watching through frosted windows as the snow continued to fall. By afternoon, cabin fever began to set in, and Talia suggested they exchange tailies to pass the time. "I remember the missionary woman who taught me letters," she began, her voice gentle with memory. "Sarah Thompson was her name. She had kind eyes and patient hands." Liam leaned forward, intrigued. "How'd that come about?" "She came to our camp when I was young, maybe 12 summers. Most of our people were wary, but she brought medicine for the children. She would sit under the cottonwood tree each afternoon, teaching anyone who wished to learn." Talia's fingers traced invisible letters on the rough table. "She showed me how marks on paper could speak, how they could capture stories forever." Her eyes grew distant. "She died of fever 2 winters later, but by then, she had given me the gift of words." Aruna stirred the beans cooking on the stove. "Tell him about the children, sister." "That was your story," Talia smiled. "You were the one who learned healing." Aruna nodded, adding more wood to the fire. "There was sickness in our camp 3 summers ago. Many children burned with fever. The elder medicine woman taught me which herbs to gather, how to make teas that would cool the blood." She continued stirring, her voice soft with memory. "One little boy was very sick. His mother begged me to help. I stayed with him through 3 nights, putting cool cloths on his head, giving him medicine. When his fever broke, his mother wept." With joy, Aruna looked up, meeting Liam's eyes. "That was when I knew my path, to heal, to help." The wind moaned outside as evening deepened. Liam served up bowls of beans, his movements careful in the lantern light. "What about you?" Talia asked gently. "You live here alone, but it wasn't always so?" Liam was quiet for a long moment, staring into the fire. "Had a brother, Thomas, younger than me by 2 years. We worked this ranch together after Payad died." His voice grew rough. "He joined up when the war came. Never made it home." "The war took many," Aruna said softly. "That it did." Liam's hands tightened around his coffee cup. "Thomas wrote letters regular till near the end. Last one said he was tired of all the killing. Sighed he wanted to come home, help me with spring planting." He swallowed hard. 2 weeks later, got word he fell at Gettysburg. Talia reached across the table, touching his arm gently. "You carry his memory well." "Been lonely since then," Liam admitted. "Ranch feels mighty empty sometimes. Perhaps the Creator brought us together," Aruna suggested, "to heal what was broken." They shared small smiles at that, and the evening grew warmer with understanding. The second day passed similarly, with stories flowing between them like water. They laughed at tales of childhood mishaps, shared sorrows of lost loved ones, and found common ground in their hopes for peace. On the 3rd morning, the storm finally broke. Sunshine sparkled across endless white drifts, the world transformed into crystal brilliance. Liam struggled to push open the cabin door against packed snow. He stepped out to check the livestock, boots crunching in fresh powder. That's when he saw them, hoof prints circling the cabin, partially filled with new snow. His spine stiffened. Those tracks hadn't been there when the storm began. Someone had ridden around his home during the blizzard, checking windows, looking for weakness. The tracks were unfamiliar, not his horse's shoes, nor any he recognized from neighboring ranches. He said nothing to the sisters, not wanting to worry them, but kept his rifle closer that day as they dug paths to the barn and well. The sun set early, as it did in winter, casting long blue shadows across the snow. That evening found them gathered by the fire again, the sisters working on mending while Liam cleaned his tack. The domestic peace of the scene was shattered by a sharp crack. Glass exploded inward as a bullet punched through the window. "Down!" Liam shouted, lunging to pull both sisters to the floor. Another shot splintered the window frame above them. Talia cried out in fear as Liam crawled to his rifle. He fired twice through the broken window into the darkness, then pressed himself against the wall, listening intently. Only silence answered, broken by the sisters' ragged breathing. "Stay down," he ordered, moving carefully to check the other windows. No more shots came, but the damage was done. Shards of glass glittered on the floor, and cold wind whistled through. The broken pane. Aruna held her sister tightly, both women trembling. "They mean to drive us out," she whispered. "Or worse," Talia added. Her face pale in the FIRELIGHT dot, Liam quickly nailed a blanket over the broken window, then helped the sisters up. They huddled close together, all pretense of separation forgotten in their fear. His arm wrapped protectively around their shoulders as they stared at the covered window. "I won't let them hurt you," he promised fiercely. "Whoever they are, they'll have to come through me first." But his words, though brave, couldn't completely mask his own worry. Someone had watched them, waited through the storm, and struck when they felt most secure. The attack was calculated, meant to terrify more than harm, this time. They spent the rest of the night in tense silence, jumping at every creak and settling of the cabin's timbers. Liam kept his rifle across his knees, watching the windows. The sisters huddled together on their pallet near the stove, too frightened to sleep. The peace of their snowbound days had been shattered like the window glass, leaving them with the sharp knowledge that safety was an illusion. Someone out there wanted them gone badly enough to ride through a blizzard, to fire shots in the night. Dawn would bring new challenges. But for now, they could only wait, bound together by shared danger and growing devotion as the night crept. Slowly toward morning. Dawn broke cold and clear over the snow-covered ranch. Liam McGraw stood at his cabin window, watching the sun paint golden streaks across white drifts. The broken window, now covered with a blanket, let in a constant draft. His breath frosted in the morning air as he pulled on his heavy coat. "I'm riding into town," he announced, checking his revolver before sliding it into his holster. "Need to talk to Sheriff Doolan about last night's shooting." Talia looked up from where she was stoking the fire. "Be careful," she said softly. "Those who shot at us might still be watching." Aruna stood from the table, her face tight with worry. "Take the rifle too," she insisted. "One gun may not be enough," Liam nodded, appreciating their concern. He strapped on his gun belt and grabbed his rifle from its place by the door. "Keep the door barred while I'm gone," he instructed. "Don't open it for anyone except me or Reverend Alcott." The sisters moved together to watch him mount up. Fresh snow crunched under his horse's hooves as he guided it toward town. The morning was silent except for the creak of leather and the soft snort of his horse's breath. Back in the cabin, Aruna and Talia worked to keep warm. Aruna pulled out the kitchen knives, testing their edges with her thumb. "These need sharpening," she muttered, reaching for the whetstone. "If trouble comes again, we won't be helpless." Talia watched her sister work, then picked up Liam's worn Bible. Opening it carefully, she found blank spaces in the margins. With a stubby pencil, she began writing simple prayers in her neat hand. "Great Spirit, protect this home. Lord Jesus, guard our protector. Grant us wisdom in darkness." The scratch of pencil and sweep of stone against steel filled the morning hours as they waited. In town, Liam tied his horse outside the sheriff's office. Sheriff Doolan sat behind his desk, looking weary-eyed and uncomfortable as Liam described the night's attack. "Someone shot into my home," Liam said firmly. "Through the window, with intent to harm." "That's attempted murder, Sheriff." Doolan rubbed his face. "Did you see who did it?" "No, but there were tracks in the snow. Someone had been watching during the storm. Can't arrest someone based on tracks in snow, McGraw." The sheriff leaned back in his creaking chair. "Look, I'll be straight with you. Railroad men have been asking questions about your land. And some of the ranchers, they're not happy about you harboring those Apache women. They have names," Liam said tersely. "Talia and Aruna, and they're under my protection. That's just it. Doolin's voice dropped. Railroad men and angry ranchers don't want troublemakers. They're pushing for that rail line, and they don't care who gets hurt. My advice? Send those women back to their people before someone gets killed. Liam's jaw tightened. That's your answer? Let bullies and murderers win? I'm telling you how things are. The sheriff spread his hands. I can't prove who's behind it, and even if I could, half the town would back them, not you. Then what good is your badge? Liam asked quietly, turning to leave. McGraw, Doolin called after him. Be careful. Next time they might not just shoot windows. The ride back to the ranch seemed longer, weighted by the sheriff's warnings. The sun was low when Liam finally approached his cabin. Through the windows he could see lamplight and smoke from the chimney. The sisters had kept the fire stoked, waiting for his return. When he entered, they both looked up expectantly. Despite their fear from the previous night, he saw determination in their faces, not defeat. Aruna had laid out the freshly sharpened knives while Talia's prayers filled the Bible's margins with hope. The sheriff won't help, he said simply, hanging up his coat. We didn't expect he would, Aruna replied, her voice steady. Talia moved to pour him coffee. We have been preparing in our own ways, she said, gesturing to the Bible and knives. Before Liam could respond, a knock at the door made them all freeze. His hand went to his gun as he approached carefully. Who's there? Reverend Alcott. Came the familiar voice. Brought some fresh bread and wanted to check on you folks. Liam opened the door to find the preacher stamping snow from his boots, a cloth-wrapped loaf in his hands. Heard about the shooting, Alcott said as he entered. Thought you might need some sustenance for body and soul. The Reverend's presence seemed to fill the cabin with calm. He broke bread with them, sharing stories of other hard times when faith had seen people through. As they ate, he offered to pray, and they joined hands around the table. Apache sisters, frontier rancher, and prairie preacher united in seeking divine protection. Lord, Alcott prayed, guard this home and these, your children. Let your light shine in darkness, your peace calm troubled hearts, your strength sustain weary souls. Amen. After the prayer, they sat in comfortable silence, drawing strength from shared faith and fellowship. When Reverend Alcott finally rose to leave, he clasped Liam's hand firmly. You're doing right by these women, son. Don't let fear turn you from God's path. After the preacher's departure, the cabin felt different, warmer somehow, despite the winter chill seeping through the covered window. Liam stood by the fire, looking at the sisters who had become so much more than strangers, seeking shelter. We stand together, he said grimly, or we fall apart. Those are our choices now. Talia met his gaze steadily. We stand with you, Liam McGraw. As you stood for us, Aruna added firmly. In that moment, Liam realized they had become family, not by blood or birth, but by choice and circumstance. These women who had entered his life as refugees were now pillars of his home, their strength matching his own. The cabin that had felt so empty after his brother's death now hummed with shared purpose and devotion. They worked together to secure the cabin for the night, checking windows, banking the fire, ensuring weapons were close at hand. Their movements had the comfortable rhythm of family, each anticipating the other's needs. Whatever threats awaited them, they would face them together. The first light of dawn crept over the snow-covered hills, painting the white landscape in soft pink hues. Inside Liam's cabin, the trio had barely slept, taking turns watching through the night. The distant whistle of a locomotive pierced the morning quiet, making Talia jump as she tended the cook fire. Railroads getting closer, Liam observed grimly, peering through the frost-covered window. He rubbed his stubbled jaw, watching thin smoke rise from the locomotive somewhere beyond the eastern ridge. Aruna stirred a pot of coffee, her movements sharp with tension. They mean to cut through here, don't they? Reckon so. Liam nodded, checking his revolver for the 10th time since sunrise. But this land's been in my family since before the war. They can't just take it. The morning wore on slowly. Talia mended torn shirts while Aruna sorted her healing herbs, both sisters trying to keep their hands busy to ward off worry. Liam paced between windows, watching the road that led to his ranch. Just past midday, the thunder of hoofbeats broke the uneasy quiet. Liam's hand went to his gun as he counted 6 riders approaching fast. Their expensive clothes and clean-shaven faces marked them as railroad men, not local ranch hands. "Stay inside," Liam told the sisters, stepping onto his front porch. The winter air bit through his wool coat as he watched the men rein up in a semicircle before him. The leader, a sharp-featured man in a black coat, dismounted first. "McGraw," he called out, not bothering with pleasantries. "I'm Jonathan Drake, representing the Western Pacific Railroad Company." He pulled a folded paper from his coat. "We're here about your land." "Nothing to discuss," Liam said firmly. "This ranch isn't for sale." Drake's smile didn't reach his eyes. "We're prepared to offer fair compensation. But make no mistake, this rail line is coming through, with or without your cooperation." His gaze flickered to movement behind Liam, where Talia had appeared in the doorway. "I see the rumors are true about your guests. What of it?" Liam's voice hardened. "Those Apache women, they've been seen near our survey markers. Equipment's gone missing. Telegraph lines cut." Drake's face darkened. "We know hostile Indians. When we see them, that's a lie." Aruna burst out, stepping beside her sister. "We have done nothing." "They're peaceful women," Liam said, moving to stand between the sisters and the railroad men. "Your accusations are false, and you know it." Drake spat in the snow. "Peaceful? There ain't no such thing as a peaceful savage. They're conspiring against progress, and you're harboring them." One of Drake's men dismounted, hand resting on his gun belt. "Best clear out now, McGraw. Take your Indian friends back where they came from." "This is my land," Liam stated flatly. "And they're under my protection. Now ride out before there's trouble." Drake stepped forward, jabbing a finger at Liam's chest. "Trouble's already here, you fool." Liam's fist connected with Drake's jaw before he could finish. The railroad man staggered backward as chaos erupted. 2 more men leaped from their horses, rushing at Liam. He ducked one punch but caught another in the ribs that drove the breath from his lungs. Behind him, Aruna darted inside and emerged with the steaming coffee kettle. She hurled the boiling liquid at the men attacking Liam, drawing curses and screams as they scrambled back. One man drew his pistol, but Liam tackled him before he could aim, sending them both sprawling in the snow. "Liam!" Talia cried out as another railroad man caught him with a brutal punch to the shoulder. She ran forward, helping drag him away from the fight while Aruna stood guard with the empty kettle raised like a club. Drake pulled himself up, blood trickling from his split lip. "You'll regret this, McGraw. Nobody stands against the railroad." The men mounted up hastily, some still brushing at coffee-soaked clothes. As they wheeled their horses around, Drake pointed at the cabin. "We'll be back, and next time we won't be so gentle." Talia and Aruna helped Liam inside as hoofbeats faded. His right shoulder throbbed where he'd been struck, and blood trickled from a cut above his eye. Aruna immediately began gathering her healing supplies while Talia helped him to a chair. "Hold still," Aruna commanded, cleaning his wounds with practiced hands. She crushed some dried herbs into a paste, applying it gently to the worst bruises. "This will help with the swelling." Talia paced the cabin, wringing her hands. "This is our fault," she whispered, voice breaking. "If we had not stayed, if we had gone with Father—" "Don't," Liam said firmly, wincing as Aruna bound his shoulder. "This isn't your fault. The railroad would have come for my land either way. They're just using you as an excuse." "But they will hurt you because of us," Talia insisted, tears welling in her dark eyes. "We bring only trouble." "Truth is worth the fight," Liam replied, catching her gaze. "And standing up to bullies is always right, no matter the cost." A sudden orange glow through the window caught their attention. Aruna rushed to look out, gasping in horror. "The haystack! They've set it on fire!" They hurried outside to see flames consuming the tall stack of winter hay. Black smoke curled up into the cold sky as months of hard work burned. Drake and his men were just visible on the ridge, watching their handiwork before disappearing over the crest. Liam's jaw clenched as he watched his hay burn, knowing his cattle would suffer for the loss. But when he looked at the sisters standing beside him, Aruna's fierce protectiveness, Talia's quiet strength, he knew he'd made the right choice. Some things were worth more than hay or even land. The smoke rose higher, staining the winter sky with darkness. But they stood together, three unlikely allies against the storm that was surely coming. The railroad men had made their threat clear. This was only the beginning. Morning sunlight glinted off, fresh snow as Liam saddled the horses. His shoulder still ached from yesterday's fight, but there was work to be done. The sisters emerged from the cabin, bundled against the cold, their breath forming clouds in the crisp air. "Town won't be friendly," Liam warned as he helped them mount. "Stay close." Aruna's face hardened with determination. "We are not afraid." "Perhaps not," Liam sighed, swinging into his saddle. "But we need to be careful all the same." They rode single file down the snow-covered trail, Liam leading with the sisters following. The burning haystack had left a black scar on the white landscape behind them. Their horses' hooves crunched through crusted snow, the only sound in the winter stillness. As they approached town, shutters closed and people hurried inside at their passing. Those who remained on the boardwalk stared openly or whispered behind raised hands. Liam kept his spine straight, ignoring the hostile gazes. They dismounted outside the whitewashed church, tethering their horses to the hitching post. Talia's hands trembled slightly as she looped the reins, but her chin remained high. Aruna stayed close to her sister, dark eyes scanning for threats. Inside, the church was warm and dim. Reverend Alcott stood at the pulpit, speaking earnestly to a gathered group of townsfolk. He paused mid-sentence when they entered, nodding gravely in welcome. "Brothers and sisters," the Reverend continued, "I was just speaking of Christian charity and fairness. These women have shown nothing but peaceful intentions. They seek only shelter and honest work." "Peaceful?" A settler woman scoffed. "They're Apache. Their people raid farms and steal cattle." "Not these women," Liam spoke up, his voice carrying through the church. "They've worked beside me, proved themselves trustworthy." "The railroad men say different," called another voice. "Say they're sabotaging progress." "That's a lie," Aruna declared firmly. "We have done no such thing." Reverend Alcott raised his hands for quiet. "Judge not, lest thou be judged. These women have shown Christian virtues, gentleness, industry, healing. Should we not show the same?" Murmurs rippled through the gathering. Some faces softened with doubt, while others remained hard with suspicion. A few people slipped out the back door, unwilling to hear more. Sheriff Doolin appeared in the doorway, his weathered face grim. He beckoned to Liam, who followed him outside after a reassuring glance at the sisters. "You're playing with fire, McGraw," the sheriff said quietly once they were alone. "Railroad's powerful. Townsfolk are scared. If you keep those women here, you'll bring bloodshed." Liam's jaw tightened. "So I should just turn them out? Leave them to starve or worse?" "I'm saying think careful about whose side you're choosing." Doolin's eyes were weary. "Some fights can't be won." "This isn't about winning," Liam replied. "It's about doing what's right." The sheriff shook his head. "Right don't always keep a man alive." He turned away, boots creaking on the wooden steps. "Don't say I didn't warn you." Inside the church, the gathering had begun to disperse. The sisters stood close together near the altar while Reverend Alcott spoke softly with the remaining townsfolk. Some nodded reluctantly at his words, others turned away. "Time to go," Liam said, returning to the sisters' side. They made their way back outside, the weight of stairs following them. As they passed the mercantile, a small figure darted out, the sickly boy Aruna had helped days before. His mother hurried after him, clutching something wrapped in cloth. "Wait," she called softly. When they paused, she pressed a warm loaf of bread into Aruna's startled hands. "For helping my Tommy. His cough is much better now, thanks to your medicine." "Thank you," Aruna whispered, surprised by the kindness. The woman gave a quick nod before hurrying her son back inside. They mounted up and rode slowly out of town. Few people were visible on the streets now, though curtains twitched as they passed. Liam kept one hand near his gun, watching for trouble. But they reached the trail home without incident. Snow began falling again as they approached the cabin, fat flakes drifting down in the gathering dusk. The world grew quieter, muffled by the fresh snow. Inside, they shook off their coats and Talia began preparing a simple supper with their gifted bread. They ate in silence, each lost in thought. The fire crackled in the hearth, casting dancing shadows on the walls. Outside, snow continued to fall, insulating them from the world's troubles for a little while. Liam watched the sisters across the table, Aruna's proud profile as she stared into the fire, Talia's gentle hands breaking bread. Something had changed in him since that first night he'd found them in danger. What began as simple duty had grown into something deeper, stronger. These women were no longer strangers to be protected, but family to be cherished. Their courage in the face of prejudice, their quiet strength and dignity, he admired them more with each passing day. The thought of abandoning them was unbearable. As if sensing his thoughts, Talia looked up and met his gaze. A small smile touched her lips, full of trust and gratitude. Aruna too turned from the fire, her usual fierceness softened by firelight. Liam's heart swelled with fierce protectiveness. Let the railroad men come. Let the townsfolk whisper. He would stand with these sisters against whatever threats arose. Some loyalties ran deeper than fear or practicality. This was about love, respect, and the family they had become. The snow fell steadily outside, blanketing the world in white silence. For now, they were safe in this moment of peace. Tomorrow would bring its own battles, but tonight they had warmth, bread, and each other. Sometimes, Liam thought, that was enough to face whatever storms might come. The thunder of hoofbeats shattered the pre-dawn silence. Liam jerked awake at his post by the window, rifle already in hand. Through the frosted glass, dark shapes emerged. From the shadows, railroad men, at least 6 of them. The doors splintered inward with a tremendous crash. Wood fragments sprayed across the cabin floor as boots stomped inside. Liam swung his rifle like a club, catching the first intruder across the chest. The man stumbled backward with a grunt. "Get back!" Liam shouted, positioning himself between the attackers and the sisters. Aruna seized a cast-iron skillet from the stove, wielding it with deadly intent. The heavy pan connected with the raider's shoulder, drawing a howl of pain. But there were too many of them, pressing into the small. SPACE fist caught Liam in the jaw, sending him staggering. As he fell, Talia lunged forward, grabbing his collar to pull him clear of a boot aimed at his head. The sudden movement put her in harm's way. Moonlight glinted off steel, and Talia cried out as a knife slashed across her arm. Blood immediately darkened her sleeve. "Sister!" Aruna's scream held raw fury. Shouts echoed from the road. Townsfolk, drawn by the commotion and gunfire. The railroad men hesitated, then scattered like wolves before a torch. Their horses' hoofbeats faded into the darkness, leaving destruction in their wake. "Talia!" Liam crawled to her side, heart pounding. Her face was pale in the dim light, blood seeping between her fingers where she clutched her arm. "Let me see." They tore strips from a clean sheet, binding the wound tightly. Talia's breath came in sharp gasps, but she didn't cry out again. By afternoon, Sheriff Doolin arrived, his expression grave as he surveyed the wreckage. Broken furniture littered the floor, and bloodstains darkened the floorboards. "You can't win this fight, McGraw," he said, but his eyes lingered on Talia, who sat upright despite her injury, dignity unbroken. Something shifted in the sheriff's weathered face, doubt, perhaps, or the first stirring of conscience. That night, Liam kept vigil by Talia's bedside, watching her shallow breathing. His calloused hands clasped together in desperate prayer, begging God to spare her life. The choice that had seemed difficult before now felt impossible. How could he protect them when violence followed their every step? Outside, winter wind moaned through the broken door, carrying the weight of decisions yet to come. Dawn painted the sky in pale strokes as Liam tightened the saddle cinch on his horse. His jaw was set, determination hardening his features despite the exhaustion in his eyes. He turned to the sisters, who stood quietly by the cabin door. "We're riding into town," he said firmly. "All of us." Talia's wound still pained her, evident in the careful way she moved, but she nodded without protest. Aruna helped her sister mount, then swung up behind her for support. The morning air was crisp and still as they rode, hoofbeats echoing in the empty street. People emerged from doorways and alleys as they approached, drawn by the unusual sight. Whispers rippled through the gathering crowd. Liam guided his horse to the center of the street, where he dismounted with deliberate grace. His boots struck the packed earth with purpose as he turned to face the townspeople. Drawing himself to his full height, Liam's voice rang clear and strong across the morning. "Silence. These women are under my protection. Their blood is as sacred as mine. Gasps scattered through the crowd like startled birds. Women clutched their shawls tighter, and men shifted uncomfortably. The railroad men stood in a tight knot near the Weizensinla. The railroad men stood in a tight knot near the saloon. Faces dark with anger. Reverend Alcott stepped forward from the crowd, his Bible clutched in weathered hands. As the good book says, there is neither Jew nor Greek, slave nor free. All are equal in the sight of the Lord. Sheriff Doolin had been watching from the shadows of his office. Now he moved into the street, badge glinting in the early light. His eyes moved from Liam to the sisters, then to the hostile railroad men. After a long moment, he spoke. "They've done no wrong," he declared, voice carrying authority. "The law won't condemn them." The railroad men muttered and cursed, but the weight of public scrutiny pressed heavy. One by one, they slunk away, their threats dissolving in the clear morning air. Talia swayed slightly in the saddle, but her eyes shone as she looked at Liam. A faint smile touched her lips, recognition of his courage warming her face. In that moment, the impossible choice found its answer, not in surrender or separation, but in the strength of hearts united against fear. The evening wrapped the land in deep blues and purples as lamplight spilled from Liam's cabin windows, casting warm rectangles on the snow. Hoofbeats approached, soft and measured. Chief Nahol emerged from the gathering darkness, his face dignified in the golden glow. He dismounted with fluid grace, his eyes taking in the signs of recent battle around the cabin. Bullet holes marked. The wooden walls and charred hay still scented the air. Yet peace had settled here, evident in the smoke curling from the chimney and the quiet strength of the place. "My daughters," he said in greeting as Aruna opened the door. "I saw your stand in town today, McGraw. You chose honor over safety." Liam stepped onto the porch, respectfully inclining his head. "Sir, they're worth defending." The chief's weathered face softened. "Perhaps the Great Spirit has shown wisdom through you. My daughters may walk between our peoples now. Their gifts can serve both ways, Aruna as healer, Talia as teacher." Inside, Talia rested in Liam's chair by the fire, her wounded arm carefully bound. Her eyes brightened at her father's words. "And you, McGraw," Nahol continued, "you are welcome at our winter camp. Come share our fires as friend." Liam's throat tightened at this profound gesture of trust. He unbuckled his gun belt and hung it by the door, a choice of peace over violence that spoke louder than words. The cabin filled with warmth as Aruna stirred a pot of rabbit stew, the savory scent mixing with wood smoke. She ladled portions into tin bowls, passing them around with quiet grace. They gathered at the rough-hewn table, the lamplight soft on their faces. Talia shared a story from her childhood, bringing unexpected laughter. Aruna's eyes danced as she added details, while their father's deep chuckle joined in. Liam watched them, feeling the empty spaces in his heart fill with something new. Family. Snow began falling in lazy spirals, each flake catching the cabin's light before settling to earth. Nature herself seemed to be covering the scars of recent battles, wrapping the land in clean white peace. What had begun as an impossible choice between two worlds had transformed into something beautiful, a covenant of hope, sealed with shared bread and gentle laughter. For the first time since losing his own kin, Liam knew he wasn't alone. Here, in this cabin, mercy had built bridges stronger than fear could tear down. If something in this story whispered to your spirit, stay a while. Subscribe and come back. Tomorrow, the next story may be the one you didn't know you needed.